You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Joining us now is the president of the AFL-CIO, Tim Dre. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning.
I wanted to talk with you, just have a little conversation about the AFL-CIO's priorities, labor's priorities in this session. First of all, the captive audience bill that was really one of the headliners for you guys this year would not allow employers to require attendance to meetings that would talk about political, religious beliefs, like I said before, captive audience meetings. To see this one get through, what is this really going to do for the workplace? Where do you see this making the change?
You know what this does is people go to work. They don't go to work to be indoctrinated or to listen to absolutely views they don't agree with. So if they don't want to listen, they can simply walk out. The employer can have the meeting, but you don't have to be there. You can go back to your workstation and be productive and move on with your life. And we think that's very important, especially in the areas of, at work. The work's changing quite a bit, and there are a lot of things that employers can't do. Certainly bullying, anti-harassment, and this is just one more thing that they shouldn't be able to talk to people about their religious views or their political views. So we think this is a really good bill for all workers.
I want, early on, especially when I started hearing about it, I was curious about the real amount of times that this happens, I guess. I know I haven't been a part of the workforce for very long, but it wasn't something that I had necessarily heard of. Was that a hurdle for this bill, is convincing lawmakers that this is a problem?
It does. It happens sometimes subtly, sometimes overtly, most times overtly, especially if it's union organizing or during an election. It can happen very, very overtly, but even subtly, the people they feel uncomfortable having to listen to the personal views of the employer. So we're saying, hey, let's not do that anymore.
Was this something that, let's say somebody who's a member of a union or is represented by a union would have already had an argument against? Is this law, I guess, more for the people who aren't union represented?
Yeah, obviously, when you're in a union, you have a third party speaking up for your rights where you don't have to say it yourself. You could go to your union rep and the union rep can say, hey, you're crossing the line here. But it does happen in union workplaces, and unions do intervene. Certainly not on anti-union rhetoric, but political and other things like that. So it can happen. Certainly it's not as prevalent as it is in a non-union work setting.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, we're talking to you on Friday morning, so still expected to be at least a couple more days of session here. But looking back on this spring session, it was an interesting one. It's obviously an election year, which always plays an impact on what gets done in this legislative session. But from labor's perspective, what are your thoughts on the way the Illinois Capitol is operating right now?
Well, it's going according to plan. We're marathon sessions in the last few days, the last few hours, and everything seems to come together at the end. And everything it is coming together, and the budget's coming together. There's going to be a little increase in capital, put people to work, and things like that. So overall we're very, very happy the way it came out. And there's plenty more to work on next year. So we'll keep working. But this session we're very, very happy.
You got a sneak peek for us on something that may be coming next year? Do you want to?
Well, obviously, I got to say,
I get it.
Okay, no, but stadiums,
yeah.
Who knows? Next year in a new General Assembly, lots of things can happen. So
I wonder with that, that was squashed pretty quickly, those talks this year around, but what role does labor play in that? Does the project have to get approved first before labor starts getting there?
No. Well, again, labor likes to build. We like to build, and then once these stadiums are built, certainly want to have people working in there that are under, that have protections in the workplace. So it's big jobs, a lot of jobs for us, and so when those talks start happening, we're going to make sure that the unions have a strong voice, so that in the construction of the facility or facilities, and even staffing the facilities. It just makes sense.
I found it interesting with a lot, you say union or labor likes to build. Yeah. In a lot of those projects when we're talking about a lot of, building a lot of different things we always hear about these provisions should union recognize, Illinois recognized labor unions or represented labor unions being the ones that build it. I know that was a big conversation, for instance, with like way back last year when those right to first refusal talks started. That was like something that was really a prevalent talking point, was we want to make sure that these projects are built by Illinois businesses and have those standards you're talking about.
And Illinois workers.
Illinois workers.
Yeah, we certainly want to see Illinois workers on the job, and we believe very, very strongly large contractors are pretty much unionized to begin with that to do these mega projects, and so but we're better trained, and we know what we're doing, and built best, built to last, build union.
I guess where I was going with that, though, it seems like the legislature is pretty behind you is with you on those ideals.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it seems like that's not as tough of a sell to make.
No.
Is that just, how do you view that relationship? Is that growing, or is that just solidified at this point?
That's a great question. Labor's very blessed in this state to have a seat at the table. And in other states, our neighboring states, not so much. I was in Missouri earlier this week and talking to the Missouri AFL-CIO president, and he said, I wish we had the kind of influence that you had on the legislative process. A lot of times, some of these states, they really block labor out. In Illinois, we're part of the solutions to make Illinois a better state.
Speaking of an agenda item you might have been a part of here, again, talking on Friday morning, a couple hours ago, we saw the amendment for a carbon capture bill drop. This has been a result of constant negotiations, I've heard, over the past 2 weeks. This carbon sequestration has been a huge issue, especially around Central Illinois, for like 2 years now. Companies want to build these big pipelines, or companies want to store carbon underground to help meet these carbon emission goals. What role did labor have in those negotiations?
Well, labor was on the, first of all, we're very blessed in Central Illinois to have a geologic formation. Of course, as a coal miner, I made a good living for several years in that geologic formation, but even deeper, it's like the perfect place to store carbon. And so we're very excited about that. From day one, labor has been a part of this, starting back in April of 2023. Pat Devaney, Secretary Treasurer of the State Fed, led the negotiations for labor with environmentalists, governor's office, and industry. And they've come up with a pretty good bill to make sure that carbon is taken out of the atmosphere, put underground, stored safely, constructing pipelines safely through PLAs. PLAs aren't required, but they're highly encouraged through pricing mechanisms, and it makes it a good deal to build union, make sure it's built right.
Did you ever imagine there would be a bill that we saw at least some of the environmentalist side coming to the table and some of the industry side agreeing on this? I couldn't have imagined it a few months ago.
But it shows that when everybody sits down and talks and they are respectful of each other, we can get big things done.
All right, well, Tim Dre, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Cole. Thank you. All right.
All right. I hope you have a great summer.
Okay.
We'll be right back.